Hi ladies, Faye Hollands here from Busy Businesswomen, and I'm super excited to welcome the beautiful Tara Skipp from Nourish and Nest onto the podcast today. And we are going to be talking all about rituals and how us busy businesswomen can inject some simple everyday rituals into our lives that will ultimately help improve the way that we operate in our businesses. Because when we look after ourselves, everything else can run more smoothly, right? So Tara and her brilliant business, Nourish and Nest, are dedicating to helping people create a life they love through the art of small rituals. And today, Tara is going to be sharing the philosophy behind her brand, which is to enjoy those small rituals, embrace simplicity, and find beauty in the everyday, which I don't know about you, but I just love saying those words. They help me get my zen on without doing anything else. So Tara, without further ado, it's awesome to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Faye. It's fantastic to be here. I'm looking forward to this chat today.
I feel like we're like polar opposites, and I love talking to you because you are so chilled and so calm and collected, and I'm just this like speaking at a million miles an hour. So I think that by the end of this, you're even doing it to me now, I'm trying to purposely slow down. I think even by the end of this podcast, I will have my chill on before I've even done anything about rituals, but I know that I'm going to have some homework to do from today as well, and I'm pretty sure our listeners will.
Well, I think if my kids listen to this podcast, they will say, you don't know how unchill our mum is, but
they never ask the kids' opinions, right?
No, exactly right.
I got called the worst mum in the world the other day, and I don't truly believe that's true. So I'm not going to go with what they say. They're inaccurate.
Absolutely not. If your self-esteem comes from them, it's like chasing the wind.
Oh my God. I'm buggered. Yes. Now, I want to share something. I wasn't going to share this with you, but it's happened this morning, and I thought it's just uncanny the way the world works. So I had a session with my psychotherapist this morning, which has absolute relevance to this podcast. So bear with me for a second, listeners. Sure. And Tara. So I've been working with my psych Luella for, about a year now since Charlie got diagnosed with leukemia. And we finished off the session today talking about my drive to have impact in the world. And I know that my listeners will know I've talked about the word impact a lot. It's been my word of the year for kind of quite a few years now. I just don't even digress from it. And I was talking to her about, my drive for that and how it guides my decisions. And her parting words, and honestly, I could fill a whole podcast up with that topic alone, but her parting words to me were that the best way to have impact in the world is to firstly start with enjoying the present moment more. And I thought it was really uncanny, because I knew that I was going to be talking to you straight after talking to her. And I think it's uncanny because my take on what you do so brilliantly is that you help women do exactly that, enjoy the present moment more, and you do it through rituals. Have I got that right?
Yes, yeah, you do. Definitely the premise of Nourish and Nest is to create a life you love, and our way that we are able to contribute to that is through the art of small rituals. And that also means embracing simplicity and choosing to find beauty in the everyday, not always having to go out and create it, but just finding beauty in the most ordinary of moments. These practices seem to create pockets of peace and grace throughout our day that small things that can have quite a profound impact on us internally, and then therefore how we react and how we work and how we love and all our interactions.
And see, what I love about what you've just said, and how I've really connected with you and what you do over the months that we've got to know each other, is that word small. You've not made self-care and rituals this great big thing that we've got to try and get into our day, and it's a struggle. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment, but that word small and the word rituals just resonates with me as well. So let's just get stuck into that a little bit more. Now, you started your business because of your personal fascination with everyday rituals. I'd love to know more about how that came to be, and I also want to know about the actual rituals that you have in your day and in your business and your life, and how they impact you.
Yeah, sure. So I am not a person that enjoys routine. I'm not a person that wants to eat the same thing for breakfast every morning. And I know there are people like that. I'm married to someone like that. I'm the daughter of someone like that. And that's not me. I don't know if anyone's into the Enneagram, but I'm a number 7. So I'm just wanting spontaneity and things changing all the time, and just adventure, and let's try something completely different. And that would often mean that I'd be very overcommitted because I wouldn't want to miss anything, and I just wanted to soak up every moment of life. But it didn't always work. And after I had 3 kids quite closely together. So there was a while that I had 3 kids, 3 and under.
Oh,
And
that's a big deal.
3 girls. Yeah, it was. Sorry, no, it's not true.
3 kids, close. Like
no, 3 kids, 5 and under.
Oh yeah, I mean, like seriously, 3 or 5 under. It's
5
just
and under.
3 kids, stressful.
5 and under. Sorry, I was like, is that even possible? No, I had 3 kids, 5 and under. So they were all at home. No one was at school yet.
Yeah, that's hectic.
And my husband was working full time and then also running a business on the side. So he sort of worked 6 to 7 days a week. And I had the 3 girls, and it was just kind of a overwhelming season of life, to say the least. And as anyone who has raised small humans would know, there is just a Groundhog Day element to it that's unavoidable. And sometimes it can almost mess with your mind, that you just think, I get up, I feed, I put a load of washing on, I wash the dishes, I dry it, like it just felt so, and I always just had this urge to just like run away to Vegas. Like I just wanted to like do something wild. And I was, thankfully had it together enough to think, okay, I need to hang here for these kids. But I did find that if I could create my own rituals, that I can, there was so much that I just had to do and I didn't have a choice. But within what was in my control, how could I add beauty to my day? How could I add moments of calm to my day and peace to my day that I looked forward to and I longed to, and it actually would help me enjoy the routines and the rhythms. And I knew that my children responded best when they still do, when there's routine and rhythm within our home and our family and our year. And especially now as my girls are getting older and I'm teaching them about their own rhythms within their body, it's everywhere. It's a big part of life. So not a time in life where I had a whole lot of money, time, fancy equipment, all of those things. The self-care had to be something simple. I remember I would light a candle at about 4 o'clock every day. My husband worked night shift and he would leave, and I would light a candle just to take a little bit of control when I'm like, 3 kids are going to be crying in a minute. And that's, anxiety provoking. But I light my candle and set a bit of an intention for the evening to come. Or I get up just that little bit earlier of a morning and I slowly sip a cup of tea and don't let myself look at a phone or think about anything else until I've had that cup of tea. And it actually genuinely blew my mind how those simple things had such an impact on my mental health in a positive way, and helped me find the joy in what could have been just kind of murky. I could have lost a couple of years just washing nappies, in all honesty.
Yeah.
But the kids responded well to it, and it helped me plant my feet in that season of life, so that I wasn't forever thinking, how can I escape and how can I do this? But actually just be like, here I am, and how can I make this season as beautiful as possible? And not I want to take an Instagram photo and all my kids are in matching clothes and not
why I love you.
Not beautiful in that way, but beautiful for me, beautiful in a way that really resonated with me, and I was able to almost see it as a bit of an art form, I guess.
So I think what's really interesting is when you're talking about that, you're saying about lighting your candle or having the cup of tea, which lots of us do, but probably the difference is, and I know for me, I'll just speak for myself and not all of our listeners, but when I'm doing that, it's not intentional. I'm grabbing a cup of tea, which I'm swigging down quickly while I'm trying to make lunches in the morning. Like there's nothing intentional about it. And there's a really big shift in mindset when you do that, I would imagine. And that's where the enjoyment comes.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I drink many a mindless cup of tea a day just to warm up or, because it's that time, but at least once a day, just trying to and I have a tea practice that I now teach, where that we can take something as simple as tea and use it as a conduit for, because a lot of us aren't great at silence and a lot of us aren't great at being still. And we know now that, the science world is caught up with what a lot of ancient cultures have known inherently for years, that it is important to have times of silence and times of contemplation and times where we do just be and stop doing. And there's lots of ways to achieve that, but a cup of tea is just a very accessible way. And we can sit, we can feel the warmth, we can engage all of our five senses. I've worked with people that experience anxiety, and a cup of tea can be a very visual thing to, slow down and watch the steam. And as we slowly sip the tea and we feel that warmth entering our body, and just imagining that slowing us down, and all that's happened in 5 minutes. And it can happen on the back step. It can happen in the work, like the tea room. I've myself been in hospital and done it with a cheap cup of Lipton something in a styrofoam cup. I love that it's accessible anywhere. And over the years, my customers have told me their own rituals, and how they've tried to bring a bit of sacredness into the everyday. And probably one of the greatest honors of my business, and I truly believe, because I was quite embarrassed when I started making candles. I didn't want to tell people. Like, I'd worked as a counsellor and a community caseworker, and generally always worked for non-for-profits, and there was a bit of a shame to say I'm in my backyard making candles, even though I had big plans and dreams for this business. But I was thinking, oh, what am I doing? It's so silly. What am I doing with my life? And I had this real moment when a beautiful customer of mine bought a whole heap of candles. I remember thinking, that's a lot of candles. And she came to pick them up and said, oh, can I ask why you're buying so many candles? And she said that a dear friend of hers had come home to do palliative care and was on her last days, a young woman, and that she loved candles, and one candle that we make in particular, and her girlfriends, they were just filling the house with candles just to really make it sacred that time. And that was a game changer for me. I just thought, when we actually do what we do with real purpose and intention and connect with our customers, and I would have never foresaw that. And I know now that candles are often what people give to one another when they're grieving, and I've seen that a lot from my customers. And so it's a ritual that, it's the whole gamut of life, isn't it? When we bring a sense of ritual and sacredness, the ordinary can become incredibly precious.
Oh my gosh, like, where do I even go with this? There's about 55,000 things I want to ask you now. So I'll just rein myself in.
I'm throwing spanners in the works.
No. There's so much that I want to. So I just want to briefly touch on the fact, it was interesting. You said, I loved the transition from embarrassed to be making candles in your backyard to actually realizing the significance of it. And I just want to touch on briefly there, you created your business during your maternity leave. Is that right?
Yes.
And never kind of thought it was going to be what it is now. And what are you, like 7 years later?
Yes. So my youngest daughter, she turns 8 this September. And so I went on maternity and had a beautiful job as a school and a child and adolescent counsellor, and had a great job. But after I had my third child and I was on maternity leave, I'd always had a niggling that I would love to have my own business. And I hadn't any experience in the for-profit sector, but I've always loved writing and storytelling, and I just couldn't shake it, and thought this is the time to do it. So I would breastfeed with one hand and designed an online store with the other hand. It took me, I think I worked out, it took me about 100 hours. So I think it took me about 9 months. So I used to, my first breastfeed of the morning, I would have no computers. And I remember you are loved, you are beautiful, you're a gorgeous woman, speaking all these fabulous words over my little breastfeeding baby. And then that was it. The rest of the day, she was getting breastfed, she was getting hit by the laptop, and I put this thing together, YouTubing how to code, and it was crazy times. And then late at night, it wouldn't be anything to be out in the shed at 1 a.m, coming up with candles and soaps and tea blends. But I was so passionate about it, and I was so excited to have the opportunity that, yeah, I went from there. And so I didn't go back to maternity leave. And I thought, when all the kids are at school, I'll go back to a real job. And my youngest is in year 2 now. And I feel like this is where I'm meant to be. I'm loving what I'm doing.
I was going to say, look at you in your real job now. Isn't that awesome?
Yes. This is a real job.
This is a real job, a very real job. Now, I want to go back a bit to when you said those words, self-care. And, full confession, I used to roll my eyes at that term significantly. And I want to bring this up quickly so we don't lose listeners, because there's going to be a lot of people in your camp where they're already on board. Like, this is making assumptions, right? Like, there's 2 camps, but they're already on board. They maybe have small rituals in their day and in their life, or they know that they need to be looking after themselves. And then there's others that might feel like I used to, where self-care was that term that I rolled my eyes at, because I used to associate it with needing to find quite a bit of time for myself, or it meant that I've got to go to the gym every single day. Or for me, even at times, as crazy as it sounds, like booking in for a massage when I didn't even have the energy to go to that appointment. Yes. Like, all I wanted to do was slump on the sofa, but feeling like I had to go for the massage because I've got to have that self-care and look after myself. Yes. But what I've realized, and I've come round to the proper way of thinking now, but what I've realized, particularly over the last year with Charlie being diagnosed with leukemia, and that's my daughter for listeners that don't know, is that the simple things in my life have become so much more valuable than I realized. It's definitely been an awakening from cancer. I know that there's a Facebook group called Awoken by Cancer. Like, it definitely has had that impact on me. And I'm going to touch on that with you, because I know you're a survivor of breast cancer, we've not had breast cancer, but a cancer survivor. Yeah. But I've realized it's the simple things in life that are really, really valuable. And I've kind of realized that's a huge part of your philosophy and business. So I'd like to kind of understand that simplicity that you talk about, because you've taken my view on self-care and made it, like you were saying before, accessible. It shouldn't be difficult for us as busy businesswomen to have a level of self-care in our life, and that it doesn't need to be a term that we roll our eyes at. I don't even know what my question was with all of that. I just wanted to discuss that with you.
And I think it's completely valid. And since self-care has become a marketing term, it has been very sullied. And in a world of perhaps Instagram and Pinterest, we can look at these elaborate rose baths, or a weekend away at a retreat, or a month-long juice cleanse, and look, all those things are fabulous. But it's very easy to say, well, in my season of life where I'm at right now, I can't do that. So therefore I can't do self-care. I can't look after myself, which is quite silly. Like, it's almost like saying, well, if I can't compete in the Ironman, I can't walk around my block. It's that real all or nothing
face plant. Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, bubble baths and cups of tea, it's one very small aspect of self-care. And there's a lot of very unsexy aspects of self-care that are vitally important. Often self-care might be, especially for women, making a doctor's appointment that you've been putting off, and not just forever being the martyr thinking, oh, I've just got to look after everyone else. But your body's talking to you. There's something that's not quite right. Make that doctor's appointment, or sit down and face your finances. That can be self-care. Self-care can actually be the opposite of splurging, but it actually could just be sitting down and going, I'm going to get a bit real about my finances here and make a bit of a budget. That's self-care. That's the kind of thing your future self thanks you for. Having a difficult conversation with an unhealthy friendship, and just talking about, where that needs to go forward from there. That's self-care.
I love this. What a beautiful shift. Like, I've never actually heard somebody talk about self-care in that way before. That's really refreshing. I'm sure lots of our listeners are going, oh, okay, I can do this. But also, how awesome to think about dealing with those difficult conversations, all your finances, the things that we procrastinate over. But once we put a little bit of time and effort into them, how much better they can make us feel. It isn't the facial or the massage or the rose petal bath. It can be something quite quite practical that can have actually a huge impact on you.
Definitely. And often, and don't get me wrong, discipline is great. And I imagine that most of your listeners are running their own gigs, and they would know that only the discipline survive. And unless you do what you tell your clients or customers you're going to do, you won't be here very long. So we all understand discipline. But when it comes to self-care, it can be helpful to think of it as devotion. And like, I'm doing this as a form of devotion. And I could just sleep in and not get up for that half hour and have my cuppa. But I know that when I do beat my family out of bed, for me, and all is silent, and I light a candle and I slowly sip my tea, because I'm not a morning person. I need a little bit of time to wake up. That is the most caring and a thing I can do for myself. I know it sets my whole day up, but I almost sometimes have to lay in bed and go, no, this is a bit of devotion to myself. This is a bit of a self-devotion, rather than, come on, get out of bed, stick, be disciplined. You said you do this. There's only so much of that we can handle.
Yeah.
And I think discipline and devotion both have a role to play, and it can be important to find which one that is. But if we just put our hands up in the air and say, I haven't got time for this, well, it's often not true to start with, but it can be very defeatist before we even begin. And I've met women that have multitudes of children, like many, and are carers, and they will tell me that they, get to an appointment to pick a child up half an hour early and get a takeaway coffee on the way there, and they put a certain song on, and that's their half an hour in their car park. It's amazing. People find things that work for them in wherever they are, what they've got available to them. And the difference between, because you think, well, what's the big deal? When you talk to people at the end of their life, and I'll get back to this, but that's something I've had the honor of doing a bit in the last couple of years, there seems to be this common thread of people saying, I don't know where it went. I just turned around and suddenly I'm this age, and I don't even know if that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I'm such an honor for people to share things like that with you. And I truly believe it's when we don't take little moments out regularly just to be alone and just to do a little take stock, reassess. Am I do I need to realign a little bit? Oh, this situation doesn't sit well with me. This is really what I feel my purpose is. Am I slowly working towards that? I think if we don't regularly do that throughout our life, and we do live quite mindlessly, by the end of our life, we can be way, way off track where we felt we were meant to go.
Yeah. Completely, and bringing it back to like a business practical level, we see that with business owners all the time. They started their business out to be, often to give them flexibility and freedom. Yeah. And you look at them like 1, 5, 10 years down the track, and their business is entirely different. They're chained to their desk. They're working longer hours than they ever did in corporate. And if we're not looking at what we're doing consciously, it's very easy for time to fly past, and you're not where you want to be. Yeah. And I can completely imagine that with just reviewing someone's life or having those conversations. Yeah. Also, I just want to come back to what you said about discipline and devotion. Firstly, I feel like there's a song in that. Like I'm just wanting to sing discipline and devotion.
Oh, if you know a song, bust it out, please.
No, but I feel like I could make one up, and I do like karaoke. But it really resonates with me because I'm a very disciplined person. I've worked for professional services firms where we build our time in 15-minute increments. Everything was about discipline. Okay. I've been in the reserve army. Like I'm disciplined through and through. Yeah, and cool. One of my new learnings is, but I've never heard it phrased that way, is that devotion actually being, and again, this has been a wake up for me in the last 12 months of going, actually, I don't need to do that 9 till 3 pickup, and it's okay to just go and walk the dog for an hour, which sounds a ridiculous thing to say. Like, of course it's okay. I'm my own boss. But when you're cracking the whip and you're trying to be so disciplined, you can completely lose sight of all the devotion. And trust me, like in the last year, you're talking about sometimes self-care is about appointments, to having that doctor's appointment. I've just spent probably the last 3 months having every possible appointment because I hadn't had any in the year before. Like, it's been really quite time consuming.
Well, good on you that you have done that. That's a huge
I did
commitment.
it, but it's like a full-time job now.
Yes.
But the wake-up call of, I love what you said about, it's okay if the alarm goes off and you think, I'm not actually going to get up and crack the whip, and I'm just going to take that 5 more minutes. And it sounds the opposite to what I normally talk about. And I know my listeners are probably going, hang on a minute, Faye, this is not your usual.
Tara's leading you astray.
Yeah, what has happened to her? Well, childhood cancer happened to me. Yeah. And discipline definitely still has a really strong place in my business and my life.
Absolutely.
But if you have been the person that's more extreme like me, what I'm saying is that devotion will, really add to your life, and you need to inject it back in. So discipline and devotion, there needs to be more on that, because it's just a lovely marketing term to start with. But I love that you've talked about that. Thank you. Now, I want to get stuck into your cancer journey, if you don't mind, for a few moments, because next month marks 2 years since you finished chemotherapy, right?
Yes.
And after being diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'd love to know, how has your journey changed as a business owner from that diagnosis? Because I know, obviously I've mentioned it a bit before already today, because, but I know with Charlie, how I view and run my business and life now is very different. And it's a perspective that I obviously wish she had never got cancer, but given we have no choice about that, I look for the positives. And there are things that we've got out of her diagnosis that are definitely, I'm grateful for. And I think often that awakening and that acute awareness only comes with actually either being the person with the life-threatening disease or a close carer. But I would like to share, and I'm trying to share my insights with my community, and I'd love you to share yours on how going through that has changed your business and life.
Yeah, sure, Faye. And thank you for the opportunity. I have spoken whilst I was in the depths of treatment. I didn't share a lot publicly, just as I felt I had just enough capacity to hold it together for my girls and to focus on my own healing and not much else. So, but I often receive and still receive apart from actually letting my beautiful, because I have beautiful loyal customers, I wanted them to know that I was going to be okay, but I was going through this. But I do get emails and messages and things on social media, and I have long known I need to probably share the story a bit more in depth, but I feel much more comfortable doing it this way than writing out a blog post, which felt a bit dry.
Well, that works well for us, doesn't it? So thank you.
So let's see how we go here. But I was diagnosed with breast cancer on the 1st of February 2019. So I was diagnosed with a hormone positive breast cancer, quite a decent sized tumor, 3.5 centimeter tumor in my right breast.
Wow.
And the year before that, I had just not felt well and increasingly not felt well and just couldn't pinpoint it. And I was seeing some fabulous doctors and specialists and kept thinking, am I pregnant? Like, it sort of felt like a real hormonal surge. And I just increasingly was unsteady, even though nothing had come up, that there was a little bit something more going on with my body. My beautiful sister-in-law, the year previous, had been diagnosed with breast cancer, the exact same breast cancer as me. So statistically, for two of us to have breast cancer under 40 in the one family, with no real family history, it's actually quite unusual.
Yeah.
And she had found hers through self-examination. And so I had been increasingly diligent with my own self-examination. But how do I put this? I had quite a rack. I had quite the set of boobs on me, and I had my whole life. So I would self-examine, but it'd be like, you know what? If there's anything in the middle, I wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to the doctors saying, can you get in there? And they said, look, we can't feel a lump. And thankfully, a doctor said, look, it's bothering you. Would you like to have a mammogram? And I said, yeah, just to put my mind at ease. She said, there's no lump, you've got no family history, there'll be no problem. And so I took myself off to my mammogram, which a few people were like, oh, just wait a year because then it will be free. So grateful I didn't wait a year and spent the $150. Best
well worth it.
Had been having the mammogram for maybe 3.5 seconds when the lovely technician said, I'm going to go get a doctor, cancel your plans today. Like, it was a real clear cut. There was no mucking around. It was a very clear cancer. So I had my biopsy. I ended up having a lumpectomy and a bilateral reduction. So I don't quite have the rack that I once had before you today. And that was for cancer reasons, that just makes it much easier for self-examination in the future. And if I end up needing a mastectomy, it's kind of tricky to find an implant to match my double F, I've breastfed 3-child boob. It's not really.
I love how you're finding the humor in this.
I would have ended up with quite an interesting scenario.
Yeah.
So I luckily hadn't spread through my lymph nodes, which was fantastic. So then I was on a course of chemotherapy for about 6 months, followed by radiation therapy for maybe 6 weeks. And like the gorgeous Charlie, lost all my hair and eyebrows and eyelashes. They're the saddest things to lose.
And look, for our listeners, if we're actually recording this and we'll be putting it on YouTube, and it'll also be in the show notes, but if you haven't seen Tara before, she has the most amazing head of hair. You're going to have to go check her out. So you went from really one extreme to the other of having
my lashes haven't quite come back. There's a bit
they look like they have.
Oh yeah, it's fake it till you make it. But yeah, the rest has all come back, which is been lovely. So I finished all my invasive treatments at the end of 2019. I'm on a 10-year program, a hormone program, which it has side effects. It's quite a thing to manage. You mentioned the Army Reserve before, and I find that a really helpful analogy for me. I think I thought when chemo finished, I'd get back on with my life and all would be well. And I feel like having survived cancer and still being in treatment somewhat, it's like being in the Army Reserve. There's an extra few hours a week that I just need to accept. I need to put aside an extra few hours a week for appointments and the things that I need to do to keep my body healthy and well, that I wouldn't have had to otherwise. And then once every 6 months, something comes up. It's like you get a call up and you just have to put a week of your life aside. I think last year I got a series of quite bad migraines and I was having some trouble seeing. Well, when you've got a cancer history, it's like, right, cancel your plans. You're getting MRIs and brain scans and blood tests. And just to be able to accept that I don't have that control. I actually, I had some changes to my treatment last week and just had to reschedule things and go and get injections. And the Army, isn't that pathetic? I so would never make it in the Army Reserve, but it makes me feel like I'm
oh my God, I think going through cancer is tougher.
That helps me to kind of, because I think naively you can think you'll just move on with your life and there won't be any ramifications. But, I went through menopause at 39 and that has ramifications and living. So there's just that I need to have this part-time non-paid job of protecting myself from that cancer returning and just accepting that and seeing that as part of my life. And to be honest, I've never been more thankful to have my own business, because I know that must be tricky when you don't have flexibility, just the appointments and the fatigue. And I'm able to have the good fortune to be able to work at my own energy levels and know when I'm a high energy week and get a lot done and know when I need to lay low. And
Oh, I completely agree with you there. I mean, I just don't know. Well, in fact, in the hospital, I remember a social worker asking me, "Are you working, Faye?" And when I said I was, because I could still run my business, she tried to disguise it, but there was this kind of look of horror. And it's really because I've not met anyone else in the child cancer space that's both parents were still working. So I've never been more grateful to run my own business. And you know, as a sideline, I think the beauty of being your own boss is that if these awful things happen, then you have the flexibility to deal with them as you want to, because I can only imagine how stressful it would have been holding down a, as you put it earlier, real job.
Yes.
You know, like dealing with that. So how is everything that you've been through, and I love how, you know, you just see it as this army reserve, this kind of extra bit of job that you don't get paid for, which of course you make the time for, which is another reality of a cancer or life-threatening disease diagnosis, is that you have to find time for these things. So you do. You know, people have spent a year saying to me, "I don't know how you do it, Faye." Well, there isn't any other choice. So of course you have to, and you have to find that time every week now. But in terms of your view of your business and your life, how has that diagnosis, if anything, has it reshaped or changed your view?
It was really interesting. So when you are first diagnosed, you have your biopsy, and that biopsy is sent away and confirms that it is, in fact, breast cancer. But then you have your surgery, and a lymph node is removed, and the tumor itself is removed, and that's sliced off and sent away. And really, until that comes back, you're not exactly sure what beast you're dealing with. You know, this could have spread, this could have, you know, there's a level. Mine was a mildly aggressive tumor, but obviously they can be highly aggressive tumors. So I think it was about a 2-week period, and that was a really hard 2-week period.
Yeah.
You know, and I would love to say that I dealt with it with, you know, grace and poise, but the truth is, you know, I remember at the time saying to my husband, "You know, who's a really lovely woman who would be such a good mum to our girls?" And he's like, "Did you just tell me who my next wife should be?"
Oh my gosh.
Because I'm a mum, and my head was just going there. I was just thinking, okay, right, if this is the end, my middle child, she's amazing. She could do great things in this world. But if she had a stepmom that was going to not be easily have it wrapped around a finger, I was like, oh, this could end badly.
Oh, but you're right. Like your head does go to those places, right?
It was, my head was all over the place at that time. And we laugh about it now. My husband nearly laughs about it now, but you know, but I was, you know, thinking. But what was really interesting is I had assumed that if I was going to have regrets, because I was like, okay, if I get the call back, and I don't take this lightly, because I have definitely lost friends to cancer, and I've lost friends to cancer who are younger than me, who also had children, and not many days go by that I don't think about that, and don't think about how incredibly fortunate I was that it was found when it was, and that it wasn't a rare cancer. It was a cancer we know a lot about and we're able to treat. And when I thought, like, will I have any regrets? You assume that your regrets would all be about your family, and, you know, I wish I'd done more of this, and this with my family. And I really felt regret free in that area. I really felt like I've done, you know, I've been the best mum. I haven't been a perfect mum, but I've been the best mum I could be. I do believe my daughters feel really loved. But over and over in my head, I had this quote from one of Mary Oliver's poems. Like, I'm talking middle of the night, writing it on repeat, like, you know, maybe not an incredibly stable week of my life, but I've got it here. And it says, "The most regretful people on earth are those who felt the call to creative work, who felt their own creative power restive and uprising, and gave to it neither power nor time." Mary Oliver. Ooh. And I wrote that on my mirror at 1 a.m, and I kind of just made a bit of a declaration there and then that I was like, if I do have if I do have the opportunity for life after this, and this is still when I wasn't sure how serious it was, there are things creative things within me. There are things I feel like a mind to bring into this world and to share and to help people. And I would be incredibly regretful if I didn't bring any of those to fruition. And that has been probably the biggest impact on me, by far. Am I just being busy? And don't get me wrong, I need my business to be profitable. Like, it's not a hobby. And I have staff, have casual staff that work for me, and I love having that team and need to make enough money for that team as well. So there's definite pressures. My husband was laid off last year, and he's retraining and having a big career change, which is fantastic. But I'm definitely not like, sitting at home and being financially provided for. Like, this is
this is a serious business.
This is my business. And this has to pay the bills. So there's a whole lot of jobs that just need to get done, but I've really been doing my best to set aside time each week to actually build some creative resources that I really feel a mind to bring out to the world. And I think that's what I would regret, if that was probably the shake up to do that. And I remember having a conversation of this, like, just probably weeks before I was diagnosed. I was at my mother-in-law's. She lives near the beach, and my girls wanted to go for a swim, and I wasn't feeling like, and I'm pretty body positive. I've always had curves, got curves for days. And, but I wasn't feeling like, everyone was at the beach this day. And I was like, I don't really feel like me and my wobbly bits getting down to the beach. And I just had this like voice in my head of like, who's to know that you have another summer? Like, who's to say you get another summer? Get your swimmers on and get down the beach with your kids. And it was interesting because that was pre-cancer. So I always feel like I have had that, like, that's part of me and part of how I think. That has definitely exemplified.
Yeah, that impetus to just get on and do things. I really feel like that. Like, I really feel like wasting time. I was talking to you, Tara, wasn't I, before we actually hit record, on my internal struggle with, since Charlie's been sick and now she's, maintenance and healthier, that we can go and have a bit more of a normal life, this kind of internal tug of war that I have with needing to make the most of every moment because we're so lucky to have it. And never have I realized that more than now, but also that there's still everyday things that you need to do. So finding that balance between getting out there and doing everything and also just living a normal, getting on with the things that we have to do. But I have those moments the same as you, of kind of saying, I won't do that today. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Yes, I will go out for that bike ride with you, Charlie, now because you really want to. And it's half an hour and we're going to feel great when we've done it. So, but I just coming back to what you said about your business, I love that you allowed yourself to go there with the question about regrets and think about work, that it didn't have to be all about family and friends. And I think, I talked about last week, you actually replied to me on this, about extreme ownership, taking extreme ownership of your life, your business. And I think that's also a part of what you're talking about. You took extreme ownership to go, okay, well, am I where I want to be with my business or my creativity? Are there things that I'd still like to do? And it doesn't have to be just about your family. So I want to know what you're doing differently now. Like, you've got that extreme ownership, you've had that a wake up call. What's different now for you? What are you working on?
Yeah, sure. So by far, if you'd put a gun to my head and said, what's the one thing you're meant to do before you leave this earth, it'd be to write a book. And I've been writing a book for a long time, and I just got serious. I don't know if you know, Seth Godin has his writing in community through Akimbo. So I've joined that. I have a writing community, and we to show up daily and just add, paragraph after paragraph, so that by the end of the 6 months we have our book written.
That's awesome.
So that's been a really big part of that. And I had been writing a book to my daughters probably about 5 or 6 years before I got sick anyway.
Mm.
And whether that, I still don't know if that's something that will stay private or that's something that would be public. I've shared a couple of excerpts on my blog, just out of curiosity. It felt like running down the street naked, but I just wanted to see what the response was. And it's probably the most response I've ever had from anything I've shared on my blog. And I think blogging on and off for years. So yeah, I believe there's something there. And then aside from the book, just actually putting together a course. I had this fear that Nourish and Nest could be quite misconstrued, whereby it becomes, all about, as long as I've got a comfy spot to read my book and drink my tea all weekend and pamper myself every night and, don't ever do anything that makes me feel uncomfortable. That would be so sad for me if that is what was my legacy, if that is what was taken of the philosophy of Nourish and Nest. Instead, I believe that we are called to live passionately. I believe that each of us are here to make our own difference in some way. And that doesn't have to be grand. That can be that we just show up with kindness and compassion and proactivity in our workplaces and in our worlds. It can be that we actually do stuff that matters and have the self-awareness to say, am I just floating along and doing what everyone else is doing and buying what everyone else is buying and getting in debt like everyone else isn't getting in debt? Or am I actually living the life I want to live? And so when we are living on purpose and living passionately and staying true to our own path and, as you say, the impact that we're called to make on the world, to be able to do that well and to do that long term, we need to have practices that sustain us and refresh us and rejuvenate us. And when we do finally get that downtime in our homes, we need to be well versed at, well, how do you make a welcoming home where people can gather around a table and feel heard and held and almost ready to be launched out into the world again? And nothing wrong with Netflix, but I think we've narrowed relaxing down to just binging something and not getting any sleep. Like, don't get me wrong,
have you been watching me?
I've totally been there, and you would not want to know the amount of Netflix I binged during chemo. I think Netflix just put a thing up saying you've finished us now, like we have nothing else to offer you.
Hey, when you're having chemo, I think that's a rite of passage. Okay.
I purged myself. But there's nothing wrong. A week would not go by where I don't do a bit of Netflix, but it doesn't necessarily like restore us. And I think so many people want to do good in the world or want to, and they burn out and just go back to sort of what everyone else is doing, that mediocrity. So I have been putting a course together. It's about creating a life you love, and to be honest, I'm stealing a lot from the book. I don't know if there is still a book by the end of the course, but I'm just so eager to get it out there that I'm just I'm not holding anything back, and just practices, again, sustainable, doable practices that we stop throughout our week, that actually we take ownership. And first of all, what do I want my life to be like, and what does that look like, and how can I sustain myself through this, and how can I check, have regular points where I check and realign and readjust if I need to. And if nothing else, I just hope it gives permission for people that they can live the life they want to live. They can create a life they love. They don't have to just mindlessly float until they can escape every 6 months for a 1 week vacay and then come back to the misery. I have a few words that I, triggers too strong, but that I really react to, when people are like, oh, it's nearly Friday or hump day, or it takes everything within me not to say, we don't have to live like this.
I said to you today, happy hump day, but I actually don't mean it.
No, I didn't hear that. I was like, sorry. But it's one thing, but I've worked in places where it's purely it. People just
like survival to get through the week, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Or that deferred happiness that, the likes of Tim Ferriss talk about, of how many people I'm pretty miserable, but when I'm 65, then I'm going to retire and live the dream. And I sat next to some beautiful, I feel like I hang out with a lot of men over 70 with prostate cancer the last few years, because I was in like a cancer gym group and that was them. And then we would have our radiation together. And now I go to a unit and get this injection, and it's always like me and my prostate friends. And multiple times I've heard them say, you just work so hard your whole life, and then you think you can't wait to retirement, and then you get sick and this happens. And breaks
it's devastating.
Hardworking, and I'm not saying not to work hard, but if we're not, it
has to be more.
Absolutely.
And I love what you said about the mediocrity, because aside from the fear of Charlie relapsing, that's my second biggest fear from this, is that we will have gone through this year and, like you, there's a plan way beyond that intensive treatment. We'll have gone through this whole experience and we'll go back to everyday life how it was, which wasn't awful beforehand, don't get me wrong, but going back to that question about how can other people benefit from our experiences, because you do get awoken by cancer. I think that's the other thing I really want to take away from this is I don't want to go back to the everyday. I don't want to gently slide back into the binge watching TV every night. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all that you're doing, you probably want more out of your life. And if you come to the end of it, will that be a regret? Yeah. It's very easy to slide back into the everyday, just going through the motions, happy hump day. Yay, it's Friday. Oh my God, it's Monday. Yeah. I mean, I personally escaped corporate to avoid that, and I'm happy I'm not there now, but I know lots of people that do, and we should be able to have more in our lives than just those moments of a week's holiday and just living for that next trip, particularly during COVID when you can't now. So exactly. Let's not put all our eggs in that basket. I love that you are such a creative writer, and I didn't know that you were writing a book, but it completely makes sense to me because I was reading your blog the other day. Now, I might say this lady's name wrong. Belinda Neem, is it Neem?
Yes.
From Belinda Neem from Whole Cottage, yes. Who you interviewed. And that's, full confession, the first blog post I've read of yours. And you've got such a talent for writing. Now, listeners, I'll link to the blog in the show notes. But Tara interviewed Belinda Neem, who runs a beautiful business called Whole Cottage. And one of the things she said that I absolutely loved was that after she was made redundant during COVID and she was really struggling with that, the biggest lesson in the last 12 months for her was that it's okay to slow down. And I'm quoting her now. She said, your success isn't measured by the amount of stuff you fit into your day. Go slow, find the things that really make your heart sing, and always, always find time for you, which obviously fits in beautifully with this whole conversation and with your ethos. But it really resonated with me, as I definitely used to define myself by how much I got done in a day. Yes. And that's really shifted, trying to find those moments of simplicity and enjoyment with the kids and with my husband and friends, and also in my work and doing the things that I love, and not just getting pulled into the time fillers that make me feel busy, but that don't produce anything worthwhile in my business. What's your advice for women who you think could be kind of falling into that same trap, that they're focusing on churning through the to-do list, but it's kind of at a personal cost to their health and their wellness, and they're not really focusing on the quality of what they're doing, it's just getting through the quantity?
I feel like by answering this, I almost feel like we're in the Matrix, and I'm going to say, here's the blue pill and here's the red pill. And once you've had the blue pill, you can't ever look at life the same way. But I made a decision a few years back when there's nothing wrong with the word busy, or there's nothing wrong with the word hustle. There's nothing wrong with the word stressed. But I think those three words got really misconstrued. And I think words are powerful, and the words we speak are really powerful. And I made a decision a little while back that my conversation openers and the content of my conversations was not going to be about how much I had on my plate, because otherwise I live in a small coastal town, as you do, and I grew up here, and so a lot of people. And throughout your interactions in the day, you can just have conversation after conversation after conversation about how we're all so busy and so hectic and it's full on and like just too much, overwhelmed, got no time for, I wish we could catch up, but who's got time for that? And I just started to see that it was a load of crap. And because I know people who have really complex life situations, who have kids with special needs, and they are carers on top of their full-time jobs, or who are caring for multi-generations of family, or who have significant, I've got dear friends with significant lifelong medical situations. And what I find really interesting is that none of those people ever describe themselves as busy or hectic. Or I ran into someone who is a carer 24/7 and still has their hobbies outside their life. And I would just, even though in them, I ran into her down the beach and she's like, I'm well, and how are you? And she's just genuinely interested in you. And there's just they've chosen a different view. They choose a different language. And so a big thing for me was, if every time someone says to me, how are you? If my answer was busy, either that's laziness or my life needs changing. If that is honestly the answer, either. And what if I am busy, what am I busy with? I've had years where I've said to the kids, right, you're all just going to do one activity each this year, because I'm driving around and this year isn't that year. This year they're all doing a whole lot. We're in a bit of a different season. They can ride their bikes to things and aren't so reliant on us. But or times when I've said, I'm not going to say yes to every party I get invited to, and that is okay. Or the myriad of other, I've never watched The Bachelor, and that's okay. I feel like I've got too much.
Tara, we need to talk. No.
I was like, where would I even start? I'm just going to let it go. Like, I'm going to let that one go.
Okay.
Even though
look, I've seen them all, but don't judge me.
No, I'm not judging you. If anything, I feel like if you could write me a cheat sheet just so I can my husband, we're not a footy family, and my husband doesn't watch The State of Origin, but he always asks someone like, what's just 2 lines I need to say just to get by for the next week. But I think when I found it so interesting when I made that small change. Now, don't be like, with my close friends, I'll be honest, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm a bit overwhelmed. I probably need to reassess. I think I've got too much going at the moment. Or I'd say this week is really full, but then I've got a few weeks with better flow coming up. I'm not saying I was living in delusion, because some I've got 3 kids, some I run my own business. Some weeks are very full, but I just felt like there was a laziness by just reverting to, I'm busy, I'm stressed, that didn't actually allow us to connect with others. And what I've found now, next level, is now people often answer for you. So just twice in the last 3 weeks, someone said, how are you? Super busy? And now I actually say, no, I'm not. And they go, oh, okay. But
that's weird.
So, some people actually get quite angry. And one person said to me, you are busy. You have to be busy. You've got 3 kids and you run a business. You are busy. And I go, no, I'm in a really manageable flow. There's a real flow to my life. I'm not I have time for rest. I have time for, no, I'm not actually busy. And when this person left, my daughter said, Mum, couldn't you have just said you're busy?
Just make it easier.
So much. But I was like, no, because it's too easy to get my self-worth then from that. And if I take that away, then I actually need to connect on a real level. And by saying busy, what am I really saying? I'm saying I'm important, I'm needed, I'm successful. That's what we've come to equate as busy. And meeting friends from other cultures where being busy actually means you're obviously not very well off because you've got no one to help you.
Oh my God, I'm rethinking my business name completely now. I'll talk about that in a moment.
So sorry. This is hilarious. And I know I'm picking on that one word, but and don't get me wrong. For example, I will often say, I'm not hustling. My good friend popped over the other day and said, what are you doing? I said, I am hustling. She goes, I thought you didn't hustle. I was like, you know what? I've just looked at the books. We're a bit shy this week. I am calling around. I'm checking out our wholesale orders. I'm reaching out to some new people. There is a time for hustle. Like there is a time for, we need some more money here. Let's make this happen. But I run my business well when I also have times of retreat where I get time to write, where I get time. I had a coffee with Claire that works for me this morning, just because I'm training her in a new aspect and just really wanted to connect with how that's feeling for her and let her air that out. Of course, we could have just written something on Trello to each other, but I think to slow down and say, you know what, we actually can take half an hour out at the start of our day to connect. So it's very much a decision. What would my life look like if I wasn't busy? And I will start at the start of every season with just an empty schedule and put in what I absolutely want to be there. And obviously the kids have to go to school. And then if I think, you know what, this term is looking insane, I'll sit down with the kids and say, this looks really crazy. I'm not going to give up my self-care practice. So what could we do? And we'll work as a team rather than them just say, well, Mum, if you just didn't do anything on Tuesday night, your one night that you do something, would all be fine.
Well, there's that devotion again, right? You're putting yourself, it's not about, I was going to say putting yourself as a priority. You are, but I think some people be uncomfortable, like, oh, okay, so the kids are going to suffer because you get your thing. It's not about that. It's about everyone having kind of an equal priority in the family, and that you need to fit in as well as the kids do.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. Words create our world. And whilst my business is called Busy Businesswomen, my take on busy, and I've talked about this a lot, in that there's two different viewpoints. And I love that you've brought this up, because that whole firstly, it's called Busy Businesswomen because a lot of people connect with that and go, absolutely, oh, that's me. I want to learn from her.
And that's your target market.
There's a market.
I think that's very well used. Yeah, please don't think I'm saying anything.
Oh, no. I love this conversation. I love that you brought this up, because also I've definitely worn that busy badge, and I've talked about this before, and how I've had to, I've wanted to put the busy badge down. It is very, very easy to fall into that trap of just your instinctive answer being, I'm busy. And it's quite confronting to hear what you said about, when you say that, what are you saying about yourself? What are you thinking about yourself? That was really interesting. I'm like, I'm taking that on board. Is it about that you're more important than other people, or is it about your ego, your success? There's a lot of wrapped up in that. But I think there's two different types of busy as well. I'm somebody that lives a full life, and frankly, I think I don't do downtime very well. And I'm working on that, but I think I will naturally always be someone that likes to fill a lot of my time. And I have a really positive association with busy. So the reframe of that is like, I like a full life.
Yes.
But if your busyness is just like a steamroller trying to get through each day to get to the weekend to start again, then that's a negative busy in my mind, and you probably want to make some shifts.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And my husband has a joke of, sometimes he says, oh, you're in carpe freaking diem mode, aren't you? Because I have that natural inclination. I have quite a cyclic energy, and I have learned that certain weeks of the month I can dream the dreams, but I don't put the plans in action. Otherwise, a week later, when I'm in a little bit more of a subdued energy, I'm like, oh man, I've got something on every night this week, and I'm doing this for the first time, and I'm doing, did I explain to you that we're going on this trip? And I could. And I think that's the blessing and curse of surviving, breast cancer, and at a young age, and when your kids are young, and having that, very real touch of mortality, and also knowing, I look after myself, and, believing for a good, long and healthy life, but it's not a given at any stage. And so that is, I live with that. I'm aware of people who I sat and had chemo with who aren't here anymore, who are younger than me, and just as deserving to be alive as I am. And some days almost that you know, when Josh says my carpe freaking diem days, where I do just like, I want to do it all and I want to make it all happen. And then finding that then sometimes that can be really unsustainable, and that I'm still very much on a journey with that.
Yeah.
I guess the main thing, I do a little weekly reset. So I sit down on a Sunday and I look and I sort of have my overall, like, just sort of goals or dreams. And sometimes it's not even, it's more of a value, like just am I seeing that value in my life? And then often, with I have like relationships and health and spirituality and just different aspects of my life. And even though I sit down every week, it's amazing how off track you can get within 1 week. And sometimes I sit down on a Sunday and I think, I was busy last week, but I wasn't moving towards my carpe diem goals, I wasn't. Yeah. And so just to realign and think, you know what, I could actually have a less full week, but the activities I do are really purpose-driven, fueled by passion, and are actually building into something that's legacy for me. That is so much more impactful. And even with my business, there are things that look impressive. So back in the day, we used to do a lot of events and the beautiful events and seasonal events. And I loved that. I loved people coming together and connecting and creating that, gather and celebrate. It's part of the philosophy of Nourish and Nest. And I know there's people that made friendships through that. And that was their little treat to themselves, was this really nourishing event they would go to. They're wonderful. They're not financially contributing to your business. It's something you did. I mean, it was great promotion. We got a lot of customers out of those events, and even sometimes some collaborations, which people would be like, oh, you've made it. You're collaborating with so-and-so. Well, it didn't always equate to great finances, or, oh, that big fancy shop, they're stocking you. Well, they didn't pay their invoice and we had to chase them up for 4 months. But this other handful of honest to goodness, beautiful stockists that you might know and aren't in the papers, they pay their invoice every month and they are our bread and butter. There's not a lot of fanfare, but that's actually what is the foundation of our business. So moving away from what looks successful on the outside to a lot of other people to what actually can keep our business successful long term has been really important as well, if that makes sense. I hope I'm not
completely.
Rambling here.
No, you're not. I'm nodding away because that's been a big light bulb for me this year, or the last 12 months in still running my business, but spending so much time in hospital with Charlie. I had to rein in a significant number of things. And actually, when you're forced to do it, I think I've made really good decisions with where I spend my time, because I've managed to continue running my business, keep a high percentage of that client base, but by focusing on the things that actually pay the bills, provide consistency, and actually get a lot of enjoyment out of doing. And there are a whole load of other peripheral things which, some of them I enjoyed doing, but others I was just doing because other people were doing them, or because I thought I had to. And when I've stripped them away, and now they've been stripped away for the best part of a year, my business isn't falling, the arse isn't falling out of my business because I've done that. And sometimes we have to be forced into that situation to realize that what we thought we needed to do, we don't. So that's been, I completely understand what you're saying. It's been a big wake up call for me, and one I'm really grateful for. And just tying back into what you said, now I'm very mindful of not falling back into that trap. Like, one of the things I've talked about is I stopped doing my podcast for almost a year. I love doing this. Like, I'm just getting so much out of sitting talking to you. So I love doing it. It doesn't keep my business running. It doesn't pay my bills. But if I've got time, which I now have, I'll do it. But I don't have to feel the pressure to do it if I don't. And that's me making a conscious choice, rather than getting in busy mode and going, oh my God, I've got to do 2 podcasts this week because I said I would. Well, what does it matter? Like,
why?
There's things I need to be consistent with, and there are things that I don't. And there will be people listening to this going, well, you really should be publishing every week. Yeah, I know that. But my business is not going to die if I don't, and that's okay. And it's feeling, having that strength in your decisions and making informed decisions, that I think is really empowering. I feel like I'm going off at a tangent now and clearly getting passionate about that one. But
I love it.
I've lived and breathed it for a year, and it's true.
And Faye, I love the generosity with which you have shared the lessons that you've learned in this past year, because I think that even others who aren't facing the challenges that you are can gain so much from that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Now, I'm conscious of time because, oh my God, I didn't even realize that was the time, actually. I want to ask you one quick question and then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
We were talking before about Belinda at Whole Cottage,
yes,
which is a beautiful space. And you've got a great event coming up there. So you've clearly found an awesome collaboration with this lady.
Yes.
What I really... what I wanted to talk about really is that when you go onto your website, it might look like it's candles and teas and all these beautiful products that are ritual based, but you actually have this whole other side of your business that are these courses and events. And you've touched on some of the events, but with your course, tell us about that. And I'd like to just know a bit of the progression in your business in getting to that point.
Yeah, sure. So events were something that obviously we ceased while I was sick, and just as we were about to launch into them again, COVID started. So we're very gently dipping our toe in the water again. So we have 2 events coming up. One is a winter warming event in collaboration with Nicolette, a beautiful yin yoga teacher, and that's happening at Kai Yoga in Corrimal on July 10th. And will be a tea ceremony and sort of a winter seasonal yoga class.
Sounds beautiful.
Really restorative and lovely. Then I am presenting an art of tea workshop in the town of Gunning. And I discovered Whole Cottage by actually staying there with my family. And it's just everything you see on Instagram. It's
it just looks amazing. Yeah.
So, and it's like 2 and a bit hours from Wollongong, and it's like 40 minutes from Canberra. Just a really genuine little country village, I guess. So Belinda will be hosting me. She does these fantastic workshops, and she lights the fire and makes you lunch, and it's just beautiful country hospitality. And then I'll be doing our art of tea workshop, where you blend your own teas, and we do a mindfulness tea practice, and that will be a delicious afternoon. So if you go
now,
if you go on the website under the Inspire section, you'll see the journal, which always has details of all those events. And you'll also, I've got free resources already. So there's you don't have to buy anything. If you sign up, you receive our Living Well Through the Art of Ritual, which I guess is just an introduction to creating a life you love. But we've had such a good response to that. And I've done a little bit of mentoring one-on-one with a few women with that. And I just know that there's a real desire for a course. So I'm hoping to launch that very, very soon, as in next month soon. So we are taking names right now. So you can sign up under the Inspire section on the website. You can sign up to be the first cab off the rank for that course. We'll have a discount for the first crew that come through, our foundational members. And once you do the course, then you also have access just to some ongoing resources. But just, I've had such great feedback of customers over the years that they just, after having children and really throwing themselves into their careers, they just really lost their sense of self. And they said, I couldn't even tell you what I wanted my life to look like, because I just didn't even know where to start and who am I. And so this course is just a beautiful way to cultivate that self-awareness and actually get some planners out and put pen to paper and really dream of what that life could look like, and taking small steps. And it's all about being very obtainable and small things that we can do wherever we are with whatever we have right now to create a life that we really love.
Oh my gosh, I just feel relaxed even listening to that. You're talking my language, lady. I love the sound of it. Listeners, I'm going to put links to everything Tara's just talked about in the show notes. So you can just go to busybusinesswomen.biz/podcast 66. Tara, I could talk to you all day, but we're going to have to wrap this up. So where are the best places for people to go check you out?
Absolutely. So we hang out on Instagram, but to be honest, the most value we offer is through our email list. So we send out the winter guide is just about to go out. So once a season, we send out a jam-packed guide just to really inspire you to be present in the season that you're at and really love that. So if you go to our homepage, you can sign up to join our community. There's also a link via our Instagram, and take it from there.
nourishandnest.com.au.
Just nourishandnest.com or on Instagram, just Nourish and Nest.
Awesome. Again, links will all be in the show notes. Tara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Faye. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I feel like there needs to be more chapters to this podcast and this conversation. So watch this space, listeners. If you give me some good feedback, then maybe we'll get Tara back on, or maybe we'll all just hook up and go to her retreat at the whole cottage, which sounds beautiful.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your insights. I feel like I've got a bit of a to-do list now, but a very calming one of things I want to go and focus on. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Faye.
Absolute pleasure. Listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, I would love you to please leave us a review on iTunes and let us know what you love. That would help more people discover this podcast and benefit from the biz and life goodness that we've been sharing today. And if you'd like to hang out some more with me, I'd love to see you over on the Facebook and Instagram at Busy Business Women. And you can find lots more biz building goodness over on the website, busybusinesswomen.biz. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. I will be back again next week with more inspiration to help you build a business that booms. But until then, I'm Faye Hollins. This is Tara Skipp, and you've been listening to the Busy Business Women podcast.